Welcome back to Switch to Linux. So I am on the road right now, as I had said earlier, and I did decide though I wanted to go ahead and get you a full scale video. And so what we're going to do here today is I'm going to do another software video for the very simple reason that I'm in the middle of using a software package I do not use frequently. And I'm now used to it right now, and so I'm just going to go ahead and take the time to show you what we can do. So the background is I'm developing another YouTube channel to talk about the cooking recipes that I have and a lot of the philosophy with nutrition and education and things like that. My task is going to be to release all of the recipes I've developed over the years under a Creative Commons license, so you can you can find them, edit them, duplicate them, copy them, share them, whatever. And I'm going to develop a whole YouTube channel surrounding that. So I've ordered a lot of extra equipment for the, just to build a little sub studio inside the kitchen, just so I can go between multiple different cameras. And I'm going to use a wraparound mic system as well, provided I can get that to work well. And basically what our final task is going to be there is to develop a little bit more edited content than I do here on Switch to Linux, but it's going to be to a really nice channel just to help people learn how to cook and things like that. And so to save a little bit of my cost, I'm going to be developing the logo myself. And I am not a creative person at all. I am a highly technical geek. I am not very creative, but fortunately I have friends that are. And so a friend of mine drew me this as a concept. Let's see if it'll focus in there. Okay, so there is a logo concept that a friend of mine handed to me and said, yeah, this is a good thing. Just scratched it out there on some notebook paper. I took a copy of it. And what we are then going to do is we're going to create that type of logo. Now, I've already done a little bit of this, and I got pretty much mostly there. I've made a few other adjustments. There's some things that I'm trying to neaten up a little bit. But what we're gonna see here is I'm gonna show you how to use Inkscape and a little bit of Gimp to produce a logo that looks like this. And so to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to use some sources from online just to give us a little bit of a template. We're going to talk about some of the tools. Now, Inkscape is a very, very robust program. The difference between something like Inkscape and something like Gimp, or the Adobe equivalences Illustrator versus Photoshop, is Photoshop and Gimp are raster programs. They can do a few things with vectors here and there, but they're really designed to do rasters. And that means your image is set out in a pixeled grid, which means they don't scale well. But if you have a professional logo done, or you need a professional logo done, you always want to make sure that you have your vector source files. Always ask for that in your deliverables. You need the vector source files, because a vector program calculates the size of everything based upon angles and vectors. If you've had physics, you know what vectors are. Basically, lines and curves and calculations, which means that a vector image is completely scalable. You can go really big, you can go really small. And that makes a huge difference, because when you are talking about printing materials, you want to make sure that if you're printing something out, you want to have at least a 300 DPI, dots per inch, basically, and that's going to give you a high enough resolution for any common printers. Versus putting something on the web somewhere, you generally only want 72 DPI. Although we're getting to the point now where screen resolutions are so thick, larger ones may not be as bad. However, once you scale from a 72 DPI to like 150 DPI, for example, the size of your image quadruples. And so you got to keep that into effect. You don't want to be having, huge download images because of slow internet, won't load well, etc. The other major difference between using something that is designed for print versus something that is designed for for web is on print you use a CMYK color scheme, because a print is based on putting a color out and then you see it by the light reflecting off of it, versus on a computer screen or a device screen you use an RGB system which emits light. So there's actually, in the technical field of graphic design, quite a bit of difference between a CMYK and an RGB, although you can get color maps to say, if I have an RGB color, there's a lot of resources to figure out what is the equivalent CMYK color. But in the technical field of graphic design, you do need to understand the difference between both. So with this, we're developing a logo for this new YouTube channel and accompanying website, etc. And so what I'm doing is I'm using Inkscape as a vector program to create the logo in a scalable format so I can save all the source files and then export the images as I need them. And so what we're going to do here is I'm going to show you how you can build this particular vector. And I think I'm going to leave my camera mostly off here just so you can see everything around the screen as I'm doing it, and I don't want to have to worry about, you know, am I accidentally covering something over with my image? So this is our target. We may or may not get through all of this, but I'm just going to use some of the aspects here. And I'll tell you in advance, I am not the world expert in this program. There are probably a lot of things in here that I do not remember, and there's a few things I had to look up as I was working on this. But regardless, what we're going to do here, I'm just going to verify we're on this. I already got a good start on the video. Then I look back and I realize that, oh, I'm still in the full screen camera mode. That's not good. And that's what happens when I don't have two monitors to work on. All right. Although there's a little TV over here. Maybe I should plug into it. But anyway, we're going to load up Inkscape into a blank program. And what we're going to do is I'm going to start with placing an image on the screen. So we have a blank document. And if you scroll the mouse wheel, it'll go up and down. If you hold the Shift key and scroll the mouse wheel, it will go left and right. And if you hold the Control, it will zoom in and out. And so you keep those in mind to keep things positioned. You can also hold down the center mouse button and move some things around. Okay, yep, there you go. So you can easily do things like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with just an image of a frying pan that I got online. And I'm not going to copy the image of the frying pan. I'm just going to use this to give me some basic proportions. And actually, I changed a few of the proportions here and there, but I just grabbed that from online. And then what we're going to do is we are going to place it by going to the File menu and clicking on Import. Go down. Here is our image, and you're going to see it's quite a bit bigger. So what I want to do here is I'm going to hover over the corner arrow and hold the Control button as you drag, and it will maintain your proportions. So I'm just going to get an equivalent proportion, so that's pretty good. I'm going to let go of the mouse button and then the Control button. That way it doesn't accidentally skew itself. Now I want the handle to be up on top, and so I'm going to go up to Object and hit Rotate Counterclockwise. So now our object is at the top. So what we could do is we could use our pen tool and try and drag all around the outside of the pan, but I'm just going to combine this in a few different ways. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just zooming in quite a bit. I'm going to get this about as full as I can possibly get it on the screen. So that's pretty good. Let me actually go out just a hair. I want to get somewhere between those two if I can. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to. All right, so now I'm going to go up into the rulers. I'm going to drag down a guide, and the guide is going to help me align my circle. So I'm just going to use the circle tool to recreate this because I think it's going to be faster. Now there are tools that will allow you to take an image and cut it into paths. It does not seem to work on this particular image because it is a solid JPEG and the program sees it all as just one giant, white thing. We'll use that for another application in a bit. But for now, I'm going to put my 4 guides over there, and then grabbing my circle tool, I can actually start from up here in the corner and drag down to the bottom corner. Things will snap pretty close to grid there. Now, these are kind of the color schemes as I had for our for our texting and lettering, so it has an internal fill and an external stroke. I don't want all that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to close out the transform there, close out the text there, and over here under the fill and stroke, the fill is giving me my internal color, and I want something here. So what we have here is RGBA, because I'm on the RGB. If you're doing this for print, you might want to convert over to this. Since I'm a geeky web developer, I am way more comfortable in the RGB section, so I'm just going to stay here. So we have down here the color code, which is RGBA. What this means is the first two digits here are the hexadecimal code for red. Second is the hexadecimal code for green. Third is hexadecimal code for blue, and then the last two are the hexadecimal code for the transparency. And so I'm going to keep everything at FF for the transparency, and over here I'm just going to experiment to figure out what is the best color I'm going to try. So I'm going to try 9s. So that gives me this darker circle. So the closer I get to FFFFFF, which is white, the lighter it's going to get. So let me try, I'm going to try CCCCCC. So that gets me something that's pretty light. I like that. So we're going to stick with that. And I want to get rid of the stroke though. So come over to the stroke. I'm going to hit the X over here, and that'll get rid of my stroke. So now my stroke is gone. So what I'll do here is I'm going to grab the arrow tool up at the top again, and then I'm just going to move the guide back to the larger part of the circle. If you accidentally do that, just hit the control. This is one of the hard things, and you get the same bug on Illustrator. Is sometimes it's just difficult to select what you're trying to select for. If you accidentally grab something and move it, just go ahead and stop where you are, hold control, hit Z, and you'll go back to how it was. Okay, so now I'm going to grab the circle tool again, start at the corner, go down to the other corner. You'll see that gets me a pretty good solid circle there. And again, if you hold control, it will give you a rigid circle there. So that's going to be good enough. Now, of course, you'll notice that the image, the circle here, I want to be darker. So I'm going to go over to fill. And then I happen to know that the dark circle code is 000000. So there's that. Now, of course, we need to get the little lighter gray part there. We're going to worry about that in a few minutes. But first, what we're going to do is I want to grab the handle. And so to do this, I'm going to grab the pen tool, which is kind of down here. So this pencil is like a freehand. This one here uses curves and angles. So I start by selecting a point where I'm going to start from. I'm going to see if I can zoom in just a little bit more on this. Okay, I can work with that. So I'm going to start with having a dot right there. And actually, it auto-snapped to the grid. So I'm going to get the grid out of there. I don't need the grid there right now. Just drag it back up into the ruler and it will vanish on you. Okay. Feels like trying to grab a menu bar to move it in Ubuntu. All right, so we're going to start where I want my grid, which is right about here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to basically move these to the various points where they change. Hold the mouse button down, and then as you drag it, what will happen is it will add some arc. So you can see where the red line is where my arc is. So there's that. And then we're going to come up here, and I'm going to do another click right up near the top. Again, dragging around. And then we can adjust these a little bit later. So we're just starting right now with just our basic, just a kind of a basic handle here. And then we'll go ahead and make our adjustments. So that's going to be good enough, although it's pretty ugly right now, but that's going to be good enough. And actually, just from experience, I'm going to put another angle down here and then go back up, reconnect it to that, and you'll see that we get a path. Now, what we want to do is we want to shore things up a little bit. I don't necessarily need this to perfectly mirror this, but I want it to be a little bit closer than it is. So I'm going to grab the second tool down. Will actually allow me to click on individual path tools here and give me a little bit of edit. So now I can just kind of drag these guys around a little bit more. and get a little bit better idea as to how I want things going. So, grabbing this guy here, and these bars here will tell both angles about how much curvature to give and to where. So I can go up like this to get a little bit more curvature in, down like this would go inverted. So here we're going to do something like this. And then of course I can grab one of these points and I can move it if it's prudent to do so. So I might do something closer to this. So again, it's not absolutely perfect, but it's kind of getting there. So depending on how OCD you happen to be, you can make the adjustments accordingly. So now what we're going to do is we have this whole path is selected. I can now come over here and highlight it whatever color I like. So we'll just go with the solid black. Now I'm going to zoom it back out. And then what we're going to do now is I'm going to get rid of the image that's back behind there. So I'm going to make sure that is the selected part and just simply press delete, and that should, oh, I got to select it first, and then push delete, and now all we're left with is the pan. Now I can see here that this guy here gave me a nice pan connector point. This one didn't. I kind of like this a little bit better. So come back over here, selecting this guy here, and now I'm just going to go ahead and make some adjustments accordingly. So you can see I don't really care for that as much. So let's see how that looks. That looks a little bit better. I would not stick with something like this for an actual production logo, but that just kind of gives you the idea. Now, this black part here is certainly above the gray part. So what I'm going to do is make sure my selection tool is there, select it, and what I might do is just select both of them holding the shift, then come up into object. I'm going to hit the lower. So now hitting the lower, now the gray part is back on top, and that's how we go ahead and do that. Now, to add the house in there, that is one where we actually did use the object to path method. And that also requires a little bit of Gimp. So what I did is I actually took that house from the Font Awesome library, and I took a screenshot, and this is that screenshot. All right, and so what we're going to do is we're going to open this in Gimp, and then we're just going to use the select tool just to grab the two parts. We're going to copy it out, paste it in as a single object, and then export it to a path. So this is where you need to understand a little bit about the difference between Gimp and Illustrator and how to use them, etc. All right, so we're going to go ahead and center that. Oh, center that, I said. Thank you. And then the fourth tool down over here is it'll basically select by the color range. So I can click that, hold my shift button. You can see from the little corner there, I didn't remember if it was control or shift. You can see that this will take off from the selection. This will add to the selection. This will merely select. So this is no button pressed, will merely change the selection. This would actually remove something from the selection, and the shift click will actually add it to the selection. So now I've just added both house parts. I'm going to control copy to copy it. Then I come over here and I'm going to control paste it. This will paste this as a single object. But the problem is, what you'll notice is no matter what you do, you cannot change the color of that because it's a single object. You need to convert that to a path. So you want to come up into path with this selected and hit object to path. I thought. Oh, is it trace bitmap maybe? Yep, it's trace bitmap. I apologize. So trace bitmap, and usually with something as simple as this, you can just go ahead and stick with the default options. If you have a more complex image, you're going to want to play with this a little bit to get it to work right. So you'll see that I hit OK there, and it doesn't look like anything happened, but it did. Go ahead and hit that. And then now what you'll notice is that this is a path. So if you hit this guy here, we could actually make some edits to this. So if I want to get rid of the chimney, I might just click on these and actually just delete some of these paths. And then eventually, if I delete the right paths, it will actually remove the chimney entirely. At least this is how my functionality works in Illustrator. Yeah, maybe the same functionality is not actually working in this, or I just forget exactly how to run it, right? But what we're trying to do is just kind of eliminate. Oh, I know what the problem is. It is working, right? The problem is we still are. It drops that over the bitmap there. Totally forgot about that. So keep those things in mind. You'll see now we have a house with a little lump in it. We're just gonna kind of get rid of these. So these guys here, we're just gonna drop this back in. Or I'll just flatten it all right back down. And now we've gotten rid of the chimney in the house, because that's a path. Now, with this, you can now change the colors as you like. So you see that we changed that to red. And I forget the exact colors I was using on the other thing there. I might be able to re-evaluate it. Was it FFDD? Yeah, let's just do FFDD00. So now, with this, that's a little bit too big. So again, holding the control at the corner, I can shrink it down to the size that I want, and then move that around. All right. Now, to put the text on here, what we're going to do is come down and grab the text tool, and then we want to click on the text. I'm actually just going to drag a box, and I'm just going to type home. We'll just do this in caps. Now, a fun tip here for graphic design, things like this, open source stuff, a great website to go and visit to look for fonts is Font Squirrel. So that's a place where I use a lot for finding fonts for web projects or finding fonts for other purposes. And I just this is why I don't drink coffee while I'm doing videos. I just spilled coffee on myself because I'm a little bit of a lazy individual there. All right. But anyway, go down here, just type in, and I have no idea how to spell squirrel. I'm one of the world's worst spellers. I think that's right, though. Doing this enough. On Font Squirrel, you can find a whole lot of open source fonts. Now, one of the things I find is that lately there's all these off-site things, and usually those are a little sketchy. So I like going down into downloads, hit local only, and this will show me the fonts that are available for you to download. And pretty much all of these are open source or free to use in various projects. Of course, double check your individual licensing on each one. But you can download a font, and I show you in other videos how to install fonts. Briefly, just go and drop the fonts into user share fonts folder, or in Linux Mint, open it up in the font viewer and hit the install button. Either way works. So I found a few fonts that look good to me. Now, to make some adjustments here, if we come up to text and hit text and font, then over here on the right, we will get a new panel here where I can make adjustments. So if you want to, no matter what type of font you want, let's just do something. Let's see what we got. That's interesting. So you can hunt around for the fonts that you like. Let's try, I don't know if I like that one. Let's just go ahead and do this. You can change the font size over here, font attributes here. Maybe I'll do a bold, hit apply. Now, if you want to change how the line spacing is, I wish it gave you the option over here, but it does not, at least not immediately. So if you highlight them, and up here in the top panel here, there is a toolbar. You see that my font space right now is negative 3.881. I'll just go ahead and change that to 2, and you'll see that there's how we get better line spacing. Now, of course, when you have your line spacing, you can come back down here to fill and stroke. And with your fonts here, you can actually change your coloration. So I'll go ahead and choose some teal type color. And then for the stroke, let's see if I can remember, was that FFDDCC? I don't know if, no, that was definitely not the color. I don't know. What we'll do is click on this, look at fill, FFDD00. I thought that's what it was. Okay. Over here. FFDD00FF, and that will give me a stroke on my font. Okay, now if you want to, of course that's not the color I'd want to use, but for illustration purposes, we'll run with this. If you want to add a curvature, then what you need to do is you need to first add an arc. Now, you can do that a couple different ways. What I'm actually going to do is grabbing the pen tool again. I'm going to kind of center the logo, and I want to increase the size here. So I'm going to hold my control and scroll the mouse wheel up. So, and maybe a guide might help here. So I'm just going to do something like a guide there. I don't want that point there. We're going to start with a grid there. We're going to end it over here, and then we're going to go straight out so it gets as aligned as I can possibly get it, which that's pretty good there. Okay, so what it did then is it gave me that extra grid. So I'm going to click up here and delete that point because I do not want that other point. So now we have a simple one arc. So with that now selected, grabbing our arrow tool, clicking on our font, come up into text and put on path. Booyah. Now we are arced. Now, if you change the path position, then it will actually move the text with it, but I can move the text independently. And then I can make adjustments. And I'll say here too, you can change the size like this, or if you click on it again, you'll see that the arrows change. This will give you a little bit more arcage. So now you can change your arc and your size. So we'll just go ahead and do the same thing for the bottom font. Actually, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and do this. I was going to say we could probably copy and paste it, but we're going to get some, because it'll kind of skew things out a little bit differently if we do that. So we're going to start with our font here. So we're going to do cooking for the next one. I think we had our line spacing set at 2. So we're just going to set all of our line spacing up. Oh, I lost it. Not sure if that's because changed to white or what it did. All right. So now we need to come over here. Change that to 2. And then whatever our stroke and our fill happens to be, we'll go ahead and do that. We'll just kind of make it green and ugly yellow. All right, which is a little blinding really, but anyway. Okay, so again, we want to put this font on an arc, so we're going to zoom in, grab another guide, throw it over here, appropriate distance. Oop, make sure you're grabbing the right pen tool, not the tool select. Clicking over here, equivalent place on the guide, drag that out as much as you need to. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to watch until we get that arc pretty much mirroring the bottom of that panel. That's pretty good. Again, just grabbing this tool here, delete that arc there. Hold shift, grab the text, put on path. And that's a little bit of the basics of how we are going to be using Inkscape. So again, I'm not the Inkscape expert of the whole world, and there are a ton of really great tools. The purpose of this was just to show you that you can do a lot of really good, robust stuff in Inkscape. So you don't have to buy the full-scale Illustrator. I mean, if you're a graphic designer, you might want to. But if you're not a graphic designer, if you just need to do this for 1 or 2 projects, this is certainly a better alternative than paying a lot of money for the equivalent Adobe products. I don't not use Illustrator enough to tell you if this is easier or harder to use than Illustrator. I've used it enough times, and I think they have an equal level of skill level. And also, I mean, but compared to Gimp and Photoshop, Gimp does a pretty good job for most of the time, most of what you need, but it doesn't do quite as good of a job as Photoshop itself does. And some of that might be because I have 7 years of advanced using Photoshop and less than a couple of years occasional Gimp usage. And so with that being said, it's certainly conceivable for us to wonder what is the better option. Is Gimp really going to take care of everything if you are exclusive to Linux? Certainly it's better than nothing, and it's better than a lot of the other applications. But as far as this program is concerned with Illustrator, from all of the things I've done with Illustrator versus Inkscape, I don't actually see any real differences. And so with all that being said, this is a fabulous, fabulous open source alternative. Of course, you can get this on pretty much any Linux distro by, just install Inkscape, or usually it's in the software repositories. And so, it's open source, free program. I'd highly recommend supporting the group that makes it if you find a lot of regular use in it. This is probably, I used Illustrator a few times for the logos for my, for the Switch to Linux website and my logo, and the introductory stuff on the video was actually done in Blender, but I had to do a few of the things in Illustrator to import it into Blender. So it's a program that I use casually, but I love the fact that I have this application available to me. And I hope that this tool is just, this video is a very helpful tool to A, show you how robust a lot of Linux software is, and B, what you can possibly do. And if you're a lot more creative person than I am, then you can probably come up with some more things. I guess maybe there's a few other things we could show you in advance. If you want to do things like drop shadow on your text, grabbing your text, and you can come up here to filters, and under shadows and glows, you can drop shadows. And then over here, if you hit this little live preview check button, you'll see what it looks like. I'm going to change my blur color here to black. Did I get the appropriate number there? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Oh, duh. 0, 0 is completely transparent. That should be 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, FF. That's what that should be. And then we're going to come over here and changing my blur radius. I got to double check why that's not actually working. That should be working just fine. I might be missing a step somewhere. Do that twice. So it was working perfectly fine when the coloration was still white. I had changed it to white for one of the parts on the other logo. I'm not sure why that was. Okay, now that should be outer. Should be an outer shadow. This should be this. Should be black. Live preview. Horizontal offset, that's what my problem is. I'm just going to change these to. One of the downsides of the program is if you go ahead and click the, if you click on the box over here somewhere, it'll change that. You'll see it'll change that like that. Then you'll actually run into some challenges there. So I want this just to be 1. Just going to give me 1 pixel away, 1 pixel away, 1 pixel away, and then blur color. I do not want to be using that. There we are. So that's what my problem was, is these were all at the negatives. And so there you can see, you can adjust your blur radius here. We'll make it, lighter or darker, and then your distance will actually move it around. You can put these numbers as negative. Positive will move it down and to the right. Negative will move it up and to the left. And then you can do inner shadows as well as outer shadows as well. So if you want like a pitting effect, you use the inner shadow. If you want there's an outer cutout, inner cutout, shadow only, or full outer. Outer is usually the one if you want to have a drop shadow, like a pop out effect. And so you can do things like that. Now, occasionally you might want to do some type of texturing. There are a whole lot of filters over here. So we can add various materials like 3D wood effect. That's actually pretty close to what I'm looking for. I'll remember that. But if you do want to make some adjustments to that, coming down to filter editor, you'll see it'll select the filter that is available there, and then you can make adjustments to the colorations, to the effects, the blends. All those types of things are all over here, and you can play around with these coloration settings. So here you can kind of move up, kind of move down, and there are various effects. And so there are a lot of different filters, a lot of different options, a lot of different things that you can do. And I'm not sure why it gave me that. There's a weird coloration around the rest of that. I think that was, I might have drop shadowed something different than I did not intend to. That did not show up in my real logo there. But anyway, I hope that is useful information on how to use Inkscape, and just kind of showing you that there is a lot of really good software in Linux already, and that we do not need to try and spend all this time figuring out how to get our Windows programs to work inside of Linux. There are a lot of great options out there. So with all of that being said, I'm going to transition back to the camera view for the end of the video. I should be back back in the regular office there, hopefully tomorrow night, unless I'm snowed in. I don't know. But regardless, have yourself a wonderful and a safe weekend, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.